welcome back. There's one thing for certain, that anybody in business today, we're going to be having lots of virtual meetings in the immediate future and maybe in the long-term future also. Now, we thought to ourselves, how do we help our customers navigate through doing a virtual meeting, and how do we turn up and be our best in a virtual meeting when we're talking to a lens? So we're delighted to have with us today one of Europe's leading authorities on storytelling, Eamonn O'Brien. And Eamonn, who's the founder of the Reluctant Speaker Club, is going to talk to us today about how to navigate through this virtual meeting world and how to look the camera in the eye as if you're speaking to a customer. Eamonn has helped thousands of leaders throughout Europe to overcome their fear of speaking, or how to speak memorably, more important. And now he's going to speak to us today about his top tips for virtual presentation. So now we'll go over to meet Eamonn. Hi Eamonn, how are you?
I'm in great form. How are you, Leo?
Excellent, keeping good. Listen, really appreciate you coming on board here today to talk to our customers. And I think it'd be great to kick off, first of all, for you to let everybody know who you are and what you do. And
yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm Eamonn O'Brien. I'm the founder of the Reluctant Speakers Club, and I work with leaders and experts, trainers, consultants, coaches, all about creating things that are more memorable. So it doesn't matter whether you're standing on a stage, if you're looking to a camera like this, or any forum where you want to connect. That's what I help people to do.
Brilliant, great. It's really interesting at the moment, the kind of situation I suppose we've all found ourselves in. And we're all very used to, I suppose, in business, you've got to keep knocking on the doors. And we're very used to meeting people face to face. So we felt it was really important to talk to somebody like yourself who could maybe help guide us through, I suppose, doing a virtual presentation and why it's important to keep communicating even though we're doing it virtually.
Yeah. Well, first things first. I mean, if you need to keep conversation going with the people that you want to influence. And for a lot of us right now, you're right, the face-to-face is gone. So the virtual side of things, there are some simple things that you can do that just make the conversation more interesting, more bright. People might remember it. And more importantly, that they will come back to you again and again and again. So, yeah. So we'll get into lashings of different ideas on exactly that this morning.
Brilliant. So I suppose taking a video call, right, or picking up the telephone, okay? So a lot of people are going to be sitting out there and they're saying, okay, you know what, I'm just going to ring my customer and I'm going to talk to him and I'm going to talk through whatever I need to talk through. So that's effective. We all know that's effective. But after a while, you forget what somebody looks like. You can't really, you can't feel what they're thinking. The video call is a very effective tool.
Yeah, the video call is fantastic because it creates an immediacy. You see, the truth is that the way that we connect with most people is that your brain, in terms of memory, we can only remember what you can see and feel and connect. So unlike if I'm reading something where it's kind of a passive type of thing, if I'm having an online conversation with you, you can turn that into a proper conversation. I'll give you a good instance. So my young fella, who's now 23, he was over in Kyrgyzstan, of all places, doing the Peace Corps for the last 9-10 months, but then he had to come home recently. But anyway, bottom line is he was in the middle of nowhere as far as we were concerned. But because we had FaceTime, it meant you had that immediacy, you had that intimacy, you felt that bond and connection. So used properly, online technology is fantastic.
And what advice are you giving other business owners or business leaders about using virtual presentations, or what tools are you telling them to use?
Yeah, well, we'll start with the first bit, which is that the reason that you're doing it is that you want to have conversation.
Yeah.
That you want to nurture relationships. But the key thing is that it's got to be interesting.
Okay.
So, if there's one thing more than anything else that you've got to think about is don't overthink.
Yeah.
Actually, this is
we all do that
presentation, but it's so easy for us to overthink things. So, if, for example, you think about when you were in school or when you were in college, and how did I get marks for things? The more I said about something, the more marks I got. Well, I got to tell you, if you do that online, that's a kiss of death.
Yeah.
You lose the will to live very quickly, and the old switch off faroo is going to happen. You ever look at a Zoom pictures and watch as people are, and you'll see, because the people don't realize that you're constantly in view, but you don't want the switch off, you don't want the confusion. So number one thing I would say to you is that simplify everything that you do. Don't try to cram. My missus is always telling me that men can't multitask. This is true, but then neither can women. Nobody can multitask. If you give me 15 things to think about, the chances of me remembering it are the two well-known chances. I mean, good for instance, so you're in the signage and display side of things. So imagine you stood up, never mind into camera, right? But you did this in front of an audience. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about how you can use brochures, how you can use frames, how you can use displays, and if you integrate all of these things, I will have forgotten your name, everything else. How often do you ever listen to a politician or a clergy person, giving an old sermon, and you're thinking you could have stopped at the beginning. That was good. And then you went and wrecked it, because what you add lashings of extra things. So simplify. It's easier for you, and the audience will be delighted.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose that when you were talking there, it made me then ask a question, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the reason why business people communicate with each other, right? Okay, it's important to ask somebody how they're doing, right? And that's, it's like reaching out to one of your customers and saying, are you okay over there? Just to let you know, we're still here and we'll help you if we can. That's really important, right? Yeah. Because, you're showing someone you're thinking about them, right? But ultimately, people are in business together to do business with each other, okay? So when you're trying to sell somebody something through Zoom, what's the best way? How do you win a sale on Zoom, or how do you try and sell something on Zoom?
Yeah, well, the truth is actually it works exactly the same way online and offline, except maybe the focus has to be slightly different. So here's the bottom line. I can't remember who used this phrase in the past, but I'm going to give credit to a guy called Patrick Corelli, who was a sales director for me for years. I know it came from Cicero way back when, but he used to say to me, Eamonn, no one is ever going to buy anything from you for your reasons.
Yeah.
Only buy for their own.
What's in it for me?
So exactly. But the bottom line is the only frame of reference that matters is the other fellow's perspective. Yeah. So the key thing here is I have a phrase I use a lot in speaking, and especially when I get into corporate storytelling, which is let your audience in.
Yeah.
It's so important. I'm going to say it again, let your audience in, because that's what you want to do. So from a sales perspective, the key thing is that you really want to be listening. You really want to avoid making assumptions about, here's what, if only you knew this now, you'd be for God's sake, you'd be so much better off.
My wife always tells me the most important thing is listening.
It's 100% right. And actually, we'll get to it later on, but that's why stories are so important, because unlike facts and details, what happens with stories, especially online, but it happens everywhere else, is that all of a sudden, you're thinking about your missus and whether you're being listened to or, or not. If I give you a quick, for instance, supposing my missus says to me, Eamonn, we should put the bins out tonight. I think, indeed, we should. I wonder who's going to do that. Unless I think it applies to me.
Yeah.
Chances of me actually doing something is not nowhere near where it should be. So, yeah.
Okay, so when you are sitting face to face with a customer, you're obviously the customer has their reasons for coming on the Zoom call. You're there to listen to them, and then if they're asking you about certain different things, having it's like when you meet someone face to face, you usually have an example you can show them, or So what do you need to present back when you're on one of these Zoom calls?
Well, the first thing is that you need to make it easy for people to actually enjoy the experience. So what I would say to you is that, when you're doing a webinar, you're doing a seminar, you're doing a meeting, the first thing you've always got to think about is, why is this going to be interesting? Secondly, how can I make it a more engaging type of conversation and experience? And you do need to make sure that you build interaction in what you're doing. So like, you and I were having a chat, and basically, how's it work? You have lots of questions going backwards and forwards. So it feels like I'm having a regular conversation.
Yeah.
So that's what you want every time you are online. Don't think, in fact, I don't even like the word presentation.
Yeah.
Presentation suggests that it's one-way traffic. But the bottom line is this. No communication happens from you, the fellow who's organizing the webinar or the meeting. The only communication happens from the other person's perspective. If I'm speaking outer Swahili and you don't happen to speak outer Swahili, a remarkable thing is going to happen. Nothing.
Yeah.
So oftentimes what I would say to you is that, especially if you're going to run a meeting or an event where you have some people that you want to really to bring more into the conversation, before you actually set the video camera in motion, would you pick up the phone and just call people and say, listen, I'm going to be chatting about this. What do you think about that? So you and I, for example, we've chatted a little bit beforehand. So I know a little bit about you and the kinds of things that you want to do. So the upshot is, don't assume stuff.
Yeah.
Don't preach, which is what I'm doing right now. Actually, was I don't preach. but try not to be that, because really what you want to do is everything that you do, everything should come from, how would that be helpful?
Yeah.
And actually, if you have that mindset, it also incidentally allows you to get away from wondering, Jeannie, does this have to be perfect?
Yeah.
You and I were talking before about, you don't want to be perfect. Because people have to get the real you. So in a conversation, as it is in a live situation, people buy from people.
Of course.
And I've got to trust you.
So it's effectively like, if I was sitting with a bunch of sales guys and I was, it's the same thing. You have to be a good listener for your customers, and you have to be prepared before you go in to do every sales call, because otherwise you're wasting people's time.
Yeah. But what I would also say is that, unlike when you're in front of somebody and, they can't really turn away and there's more interaction, when you're looking to and through a lens, the problem is that that's quite inanimate. And so obviously, I can see you here because there's only one person. Now imagine that there's 5 or 10 people, or let's say I was on a meeting last night where there was 40 people on a Zoom call. You are not seeing all of those faces because you'd have to be scrolling backwards and forwards page to page. So you can't do that.
Yeah.
So, it's what I would say to you is that give yourself a break. It's more important to be approximately right than precisely wrong. But be the real you. Don't try to be putting on airs and graces. Yeah,
no, that's good advice. So I suppose then you're trying to connect with the audience through a lens, essentially, right? Or your customer. In a lot of situations, it'll probably most people doing one-on-one type conversations, but people will find themselves maybe doing a sales pitch to a bigger crowd. Okay, so when you're talking through a lens, it's quite interesting because I think you get distracted when you're on these calls looking at yourself as opposed to looking at the camera. Yeah. So what's the trick to looking at?
I'm going to show you something, actually. This might make you laugh, but up beside the lens here to remind me to do this, and this is a good idea. Look, there's a picture of you.
Very good.
Very good. There's Leo up there, which reminded me to both look up and speak to Leo because you're not down there.
Yeah. So the trick is looking at that person in the eye. But
it's looking that person in the eyes. And the other thing that happens is when you're looking so the first thing is that, even though you may have like 15 or 20 or 500 people that are watching you in a video, every single person who's watching you is having a one-to-one conversation. So unlike when I'm in a public speaking setting and I might have 500 people where I'm interacting with the entire crowd, everything is about the one-on-one. Everything is about these. You see this?
Yeah.
Which is, as we would in a regular conversation. You know, if I don't have decent eye contact, you're a bit stuffed. So
Yeah.
that's how people assess, do I believe a word? And the other thing is that as I'm doing this, don't do this. In fact, I was watching a meeting last night and I could see that somebody was reading this. Wouldn't you lose the will to live? Very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, there are some simple things that you can do. The other thing is that's very, very important is that when you're looking through a lens, unlike when I'm having a conversation one-on-one, when the energy level will probably be okay because it sounds okay and all that goes with it. When you have a lot of people, oftentimes we lose a little bit of momentum.
Yeah.
And the problem is that the camera now, I'm always wary of any statistic that gives you a precise percentage. So I'll treat this with the disrespect it deserves. But allegedly, 30+% of your energy is lost through the lens. And I don't know what the percent is, but it's a lot. So the bottom line is you always have to amplify. But people in Ireland, you'll know who the Billy Barry troops are. But wherever you are in the world, you'll have your version of those kind of kid performer type things. You don't want to be really animated because if you do, honestly, you sound like you've lost the plot. But also, you can't sustain it. And the other thing is, people will realize I don't believe a word from that. So people have to get you. So you always have to add just a little bit extra. So Leo Plus is what we're looking for.
Jesus, if you got Leo Plus, you'd be in trouble. But okay, so I suppose that comes around then to, what are the speaking mistakes you need to avoid online?
Yeah, so the single biggest one is one that I kind of talked about a little bit earlier, and that is this notion of trying to do too much. So, if you've got a 10-minute or 15-minute presentation, one of the things that we oftentimes do is say, how much stuff, because it'd be really, really valuable, can I cram into this space?
Yeah.
The problem is that your audience can't and won't absorb things the same way. You see, your number one job is to make sure that people get it and they do something with it.
Yeah.
Even if I have slides and other things, how often have you gone to a regular kind of webinar or meeting or anything else where somebody gave you slides, and if I said to you, did you read them afterwards?
Oh.
And the answer is not a chance.
No, and not during the meeting either.
I thought that'd be a great idea. I'll definitely read those. You never do. So the bottom line is people get what they get out of the experience. So make your life simpler. Focus everything and give people one job to do, because the truth is, particularly in business settings, and this is online, offline, doesn't make any difference. Nothing happens at the time that you're having this conversation. Absolutely nothing. The only thing that happens is people say, that was really good. That was useful. I'm going to do something with that. So whatever you're saying to your audience, it ought to be actionable. Yeah.
Okay. But a big crutch for a lot of people presenting, and I've often used it myself as well, is that PowerPoint presentation.
Anyway, yeah.
And it's great to have notes and to refer to the notes, but it's a good guide, which I don't think is a problem having as a guide. But a lot of people do use a PowerPoint presentation. They read it off, every bit that's on it, and that's
they do, yeah. Yeah, well, see, I'm going to let you into a secret which maybe won't surprise you. So, again, I'm always leery of stats that are, a little bit perfect. But allegedly, over 30 million people use PowerPoint slides every day. And the truth is, research shows that they might as well have stayed in bed and sent people a letter.
Yeah.
The recall level from a typical PowerPoint presentation, what do you think it is?
I don't know. Judging by my recall on some of those things, I'd say it's quite low.
Less than 1%.
Wow.
Yeah, less than 1%. And the reason is because PowerPoint isn't your friend, because what's it full of? Words. And what's the one thing people don't remember? Words. What do they remember? They remember stories. So the bottom line is that you're setting people up to fail, because as soon as I have, like I was watching a presentation last night which was talking about online presentation, and there was 10 points on each slide.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as somebody has gone from one point to the other, here's the thing. If you put lots of words up, what's the first thing your audience is going to do?
They're probably going to start trying to read it.
Read it. And if they're reading that, do they listen to you?
No.
Not a bit of it. Basically it's la, 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 la. And the truth is, most people, if they are reading it, actually, they can read it a hell of a lot quicker than you're going to say it.
I know.
So, again, I go back to men can't multitask and nor can women.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're setting up noise. And the thing is also that as soon as you go on to the next slide, the recall level for whatever the hell happened before is gone.
Yeah.
I did a fascinating interview on a podcast called the Corporate Storytellers Club podcast with a fellow who's specialized in memory over at Notre Dame University. And he talked about how doors matter. And this actually applies online too. Have you ever done this where let's say you're in your kitchen and then you leave that room and then you say, oh, I've forgotten something. And then you can't remember what the hell it was.
Oh, listen, all the time.
It happens to all of us. So what happens is that basically your brain deals with what it sees right now, and I've just disconnected it. Now imagine the online where we're all, Jeez Louise, I can't take anymore. Would you stop it already? What?
Yeah.
You're setting people up to fail is what you're doing. So what I would say is, first of all, don't create any online presentation or regular presentation starting with PowerPoint. Always start with what do you want to say that's interesting, lots and lots of great stories to lead with and all those kinds of things, and only use it to back things up. But then lose all the words, go visual.
Yeah. So it's all about embracing the story is what you're telling us.
It's all about embracing the story, because the truth is that there is nothing, and it certainly doesn't matter, because obviously you're doing these interviews, and it's not just going to go to people in Ireland, people around the place will see these. But across every language and culture, there isn't a culture in the world where stories are not at the center of what you learn and how you function in life. Every decision you make, doesn't matter if you're buying an ice cream or I'm buying a new exhibition display stand.
Yeah.
I'm buying a new car. It doesn't matter what it is. Emotion is always the thing that kicks it into gear.
Yeah.
So that's tied into the stories that we tell ourselves and also what we think we know. And all of that is based around story. So if you're not leading with story, you're not at the races.
Okay, so there's a lot of people watching this, right? And not everybody is prepared to, or I've spoken to, I did one of these videos there a few weeks ago about how to do a vlog, right? Oh, and I was literally, I only started vlogging or doing something like this recently myself, right? So I was just trying to show as simple as possible, grab your phone, talk to it, right? And I spoke to a customer afterwards and he goes, oh no, I couldn't do that. Just tell us why everybody can do, because they're going to have to do it. So tell us why, or tell us how that person who's sitting at home now going, I can't do one of these things. How can they do it? What can they do?
Yeah. Well, one of the quickest things that you can do when you want to try anything new is don't think that you have to start with the Holy Grail, that you have to be an expert to do something. So I was talking with a coach recently over in the UK, Nikki. And Nikki was in the British Army for years, and she had a great phrase that applies to this coronavirus right now. So I'm going to give you a full Nikki Bass. Great idea. She said, in these conditions, no plan survives contact. I fucking love that. That's exactly what it is. So the truth is that you've got to try things and don't expect perfection. And I'll give you a quick, for instance, now, because of trying something and then learning from it, and then maybe the next time you'll be better. So kind of a very sad thing recently. I have an aunt who got over 100, and unfortunately she died. This happened in recent weeks. So it's sad, but she got over 100 and it's fantastic. But anyway, the bottom line is, like a lot of the places, the funeral, you couldn't have more than 10 people attend. So a lot of us, we were watching it through Zoom. And I had a cousin who did a great job. She did a trial run the previous night, and that was grand and what have you. And then she went live and dangerous. And the snag was, it never occurred to her. And then she realized afterwards that actually they're mad echoes in a church.
Yeah.
And between where she had the camera and where the various people were doing whatever they were going to do, the sound was appalling.
Yeah.
The shot is that all we could see was basically people doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
So the truth is that, you've got to give it a bash. So one of the quickest things that you can do is Zoom or what have you, just set up kind of demos where you've got some people where there's no downside and give it a bash.
Yeah. No, so just do it, basically.
Just do it. And you realize, incidentally, there are lots of things like, one of the things that is especially important if you're going to do anything online is, for God's sake, pay attention to sound.
Yeah.
Because, you can have the best content in the world, but if people can't hear you, you're a bit stuffed.
Yeah.
And so finding the right microphones, finding the right other things, it really, really matters. I'll give you a good, for instance, actually, where I learned, because this is Eamonn doing something stupid, where I did my first online seminar and I thought I was getting a great reaction. And I asked somebody afterwards, so what do you think? I said, that was absolutely marvelous. Really, really enjoyed that. And she said, but there's one thing. You sound a bit like Mickey Mouse. I said, what? You sounded like you were on helium. I didn't hear any of this because I had plugged it into a digital microphone, but what I didn't realize, it was set on the wrong setting. It's a bit like the fashion records that were set at the wrong speed.
Yeah.
So, of course, Numpty McNumpty, I think I've done a marvelous job, but it was useless. So the recording, everybody got a good laugh at Eamonn's expense. But, truth is, you're going to have to learn. And also, people don't expect you to be perfect. And incidentally, you can always say, look, it's the coronavirus. So, sure, what can you do? You have to learn.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is the last question, Eamon, because you've given us a load of time and really appreciate it. And you've given us some great advice there on how to do one of these virtual presentations. But I'm always interested from other people who work in business, right? And I suppose it's the whole purpose of these video calls are to show people different angles and to look at different things, right? So you're in business and you're teaching people how to public speak, okay? You meet and you train people all over Europe. So your business now has dramatically changed. So you're probably, like what we're telling our customers having to do, embracing technology. Is that the way forward for you, or?
It absolutely is, because the bottom line is, so I do a lot of, I don't just train people, I do a lot of professional speaking. I specialize in storytelling that inspires.
Yeah.
So I have loads and loads of international events that were supposed to happen in the next while, and every single one of them has, bar one, has been postponed. So it's going to go more virtual. So I would say probably for the next 12 months at least, could even be 18 months, the world is going to change. But the realization here is that for all of my clients, they're now going to have to do an awful lot more online. And that requires kind of a different kind of mindset and skill, and also permission to give things a bash. So the opportunity actually grows from that. But I would say the other thing is that it also forces you to rethink how am I solving something that's relevant to what my audience needs right now? And if you don't quite have that in the right place, maybe you need to reframe your thinking. But at the core of everything you do, it should be answering that one question, which is, why would somebody be better off as a consequence of Eamon or Leo doing something?
Can you give me one? Can you give me an example? You don't have to name anybody, but say a leader in a big business or organization. How have you seen anybody how they're maneuvering through this, and how are they maybe dealing with their customers or their staff? What are they doing? What sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a good, for instance. So I'll go domestic here. So my wife is involved in the environmental side of things.
Okay.
So she would do a lot of lunch and learns about how you should recycle. And of course, all of that immediately dried up. But what she's now doing, and she even did one this morning, which is why I made sure the door was shut. Is she's now experimenting with doing things online. And so there's a new skill here, and I'll give you an example. So I said, well, why don't we do just some simple, helpful things that people might like? And she said, but I don't know how to do that. And I said, listen, I'm going to plonk you in front of a camera here and just chat to me. Forget about the camera. Just chat to me and we'll have a wee chat. So anyway, I asked her to give me 2 tips that everyone should be thinking about right now in coronavirus. And so I'm doing a month-long challenge with some pals on video creation, which is incidentally a great way to work on your skills. So so I asked her 2 questions, and she has had over 1,000 views to that. And yesterday, when we're out walking on our little walk that we can do beside our house, somebody said, "Oh, you're dead right about that now. I mean, like when people are washing their hands and the water keeps going, I'm always at my kids, would you stop it already?" And funny thing is, he didn't see the video. His missus said, "Did you see what Mindy said about that?" So that's the power of these things. But you don't know if you don't try.
No, absolutely. And it's all about trying, and that's it. So, Eamonn, listen, really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
We're going to share some links at the end of this where people can find you, where they can maybe pick up your book, read your book about how to storytell. They can listen to your podcast if they want to hear more stories from yourself. So it's much appreciated.
Yep, my pleasure.